Hello, everyone. Good afternoon for all of you. I hope you are enjoying the last 2 days of COP. I know everyone is super tired. Let's show some energy. What do you want? No. Again, what do we want? You look really tired. Are you? What do you want? When do we want it? When do we want it? Let's try it with peace. What do we want? Peace. Yes. What do you want? Peace and justice. What do you want? Peace and justice. When do you want it? Now. Okay, that's the spirit. As warriors and as fighters against climate change, we really don't have time to be tired. So we should just keep going until the last moment for us and for the future generation too. So basically, we are here trying to stop climate change and its impact for one main reason, is the continuity of the human race, the continuity of the environment that we are having now, and the continuity of the planet. Yet climate change is disturbing that, and the impact of it, the crisis, how fossil fuel is interacting with our environment, is all of these are actually threaten this agenda that we are all working on, which is the continuity of the people and the planet. Climate change impacts the human security to the point that all of us now are in threat, whether we are developed, developing, or least developed countries. Climate crisis will reach us all at some point. Well, the main agenda, that the main work that we are working on today and all other days, is to conserve the environment, to conserve the human species, and we continue in peace developing our world for us and for the future generation. In many areas around the world, climate change impacts directly the safety and the security of the people by the famines, the droughts, the wars that actually build and based and triggered by conflicts over natural resources and many other reasons. Well, our main purpose is to keep the peace and the security of the people and the planet, and that's why we are having this fight, and that's why we will continue. Today, I am honored to be joined by marvelous people. Everyone is fighting in their own way, in their own community, against their own threat, because climate change is one threat, but it has different dimensions and different formats. I am very glad that a lot of discussions are finally concluding about the relationship and the link between climate change and human security. And this is the main purpose, plus our security, the other creatures that are sharing the planet with us. Well, many of the sessions at COP27 talked about climate change, peace, and security. A lot of reports and a lot of scientific research are done about it, yet there is no single word about peace or security in all of the climate change conventions, starting from the convention itself, the UNFCCC convention, and ending by the Glasgow Work Program or the Glasgow Work. Not a single mention for climate change and its relationship to peace and security. This has to be changed because we need a formal acknowledgement of the situation and a formal acknowledgement of the threat that climate change is playing. And the question that we are always asked, why are we having all of these conventions? Of course, to keep the human species. Does it say it actually in the text? Never. So let's work all of us together for that. First, before also I start introducing the amazing panelists we are having today, I want to acknowledge the presence of Kasia, who's a young person working on a documentary that's called 1.5 Degrees of Peace, and it's actually working towards formalizing but also highlighting the role of young people in that. Kasia? I am also very much honored by joining the welcoming and I repeat the peace person for today, the person who represents the organization that won the Nobel Prize this year of 2022, from Ukraine, and that's for a very good reason. Ukraine is being invaded by Russia, causing a big war that killed and made a lot of, actually most of the Ukrainian people refugees in other countries, not for any good reason, but the reason that Russia have a lot of money that's gained from fossil fuel. And we need this phase out, not phasing down, phasing out from fossil fuel and all of related financing to stop wars. Well, welcome me. No more fossil fuel. No more fossil fuel. No more fossil fuel. Don't fuel war. Don't fuel war. I am very honored to be welcome and to be joined by Alexandra Matoviciu, who represent the organization who won the Nobel Prize this year. She's joining us live from Kyiv, and we are very lucky to have you. We are very also thankful for your safety, and we wish if you were able to be here with us today. Alexandra.
Thank you very much for providing me a floor. I am a human rights defender, head of Center for Civil Liberties, and I want to tell you from our own experience how oil and gas become one of the biggest threats to peace and human rights in our part of the world. Millions of Ukrainians in these days are suffering from the large-scale Russian aggression. And this war is a result of total impunity, which Russia enjoyed for decades. For decades, Russia killed journalists, jailed lawyers, and prosecuted protesters in their own country. For decades, Russia committed war crimes in Chechnya, Moldova, Georgia, Mali, Syria. Russia have never been punished for this. There are several reasons, but one of the main is dependency on Russian oil and gas. As a Ukrainian, I've seen how fossil fuels have powered Russia's war machinery for too long. Now we are paying with our lives for such a policy, because the voice of human rights defenders haven't been heard before. For years, we tried to convince the world that the connection between peace and human rights is inextricable, and the state that systematically disregards human rights obligations is a security threat for the entire region. We all live in a very interconnected world. From Ukraine to Tuvalu to South Sudan, we face with global challenges, wars, climate change, human pain. There is a temptation not to solve complex problems with the hope that they will vanish. But truth is that the complex problems will become only more acute. And we need to find the complex answers to the complex problems. So I urge world leaders at COP27 to take responsibility for their commitment to limiting global warming to 1.5 Celsius. It's time to act for sustainable development and peace with the planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. And thank you also for acknowledging other countries that are actually facing conflicts over natural resources, conflicts because of floods and other climate disasters. They call it natural disaster, but there is nothing natural about disasters. They are clearly climate disasters. Thank you very much. And we were honored to have you today with us. Well, the science says it very clear. Very clear. It's either we stay under actually the 1.5 or we will face a huge devastating problems. Africa as a continent already reached 1.5 degrees in many areas and in many cities, according to the IGAD Meteorological Center and other meteorological areas. I think the role of science is very important to be acknowledged. And the 1.5 degree is the minimum that we can actually take. And that's why keeping the 1.5 alive is an ultimate goal for our discussions and for not only this COP, but also the next COP in UAE. And the only way to do that is by, again, phasing out of fossil fuel and doing a serious reduction of the emissions of the CO2. Joined today also, and very much honored by one of the IPCC scientists, one of the finest scientists from Ukraine, a person who can again emphasize very much the role of science and the role of and the difference between the 2 degrees and the 1.5 degrees. Please welcome with me Svetlana Krakowska. From Ukraine.
Okay, thank you so much. It's really honor for me to be in this auditorium with you, with these youth who actually fight for your future here. And I really scientist, I really climatologist, and I work for. Sorry. Okay. Okay. I work with IPCC as representative of Ukraine to IPCC almost 10 years now at this moment. And just to tell you stories that on 24th of February, when the full-scale war started on Ukraine, I was head of delegation, and we were just about to approve summary for policymakers of about impact, adaptation, and vulnerability. And in the morning, I told my friends, my colleagues at the plenary, it was Thursday like today, actually. And I told them, look, we are now under attack of Russians in my country. We have now much more big threat. We have threat to our lives. But I understand, and we understand, that climate change will not stop. That's why we will go, and next 3 days we'll do our homework. We will survive. We will withstand to Russian aggression, and you will continue your work here in IPCC meeting, and will approve this very important summary for policymakers to make them able to act. And then next 3 days actually were crucial for Ukraine and were crucial for climatological science. And during this actually meeting, and during when this full-scale war started, I had a lot of in my head to thinking about parallels and thinking about roots. And I really was the first person who put this connection. And I said that, look, we see that climate change continue, and the cause of climate change is fossil fuels, our emissions to atmosphere. But it's our addiction actually to this, and easiness how we burn these fossil fuels. And the country actually who made us dependent on this is Russia. And Russia depends on this income, and her army actually depends on the income. So please stop fund the war, this fossil fuel war. So this was my message actually to the world. And now I'm really very happy that here in COP, we see that this message now in your voices and everywhere. And I really want to emphasize how crucial it is for us, not only for us in Ukraine, but not only for us, because we are just now visible, but for many other countries who actually suffering from climate change. And just to say about this 1.5 as scientist now, yes, this is the only way how we can survive in most of us, let's say, on this planet, because the difference between 1.5 and 2, twice more people will be suffering from climate change. And actually it's a lot. So this is hundreds of millions. And every bit of warming matters. So this is very simple message from IPCC, actually. And actually, I want just to again, to put this parallel, because I was thinking how to explain people, because many people were just, laughing on this 1.1 degree, which we all already have. So I found the way how to explain. If you have your normal temperature of your body as 36.6, so now we have plus 1.1, and we are already sick. And if we will have 1.5, just add it. And look what will be difference if you will have +2 and even more, which actually we cannot rule out. So with this, I would say from scientific point of view, from natural science, that we cannot change laws of our physical worlds. But as humans, we must change the way we live this planet. And politicians, they are responsible for these laws. So that's why actually we need to put pressure on them and ask them to make everyone they can to save us on this planet. And with this, actually, I want just to thank you as yours, because without your energy, I guess it will be not possible to make it so loud in this auditorium, so these politicians will listen for you.
We need to listen to science more and more. Thank you very much. Well, it's always very much important and touching to actually hear the stories of the people who are on the front line of the climate crisis. People who live every day the scare that they will wake up one day and find everything disappeared. The scare that they can actually find themselves under the water, find themselves in another area because of a hurricane or a volcano, find themselves trying to find one sip of water for 3 days just to end their thirsty, find themselves in a place where they cannot feed themselves nor their children or anyone around them, and they see the elder and the weaker people, actually population die. Well, it's very important to hear the stories of the people who actually fight climate change impacts every day, so we can acknowledge the privilege that we can actually have. Please welcome with me also and join me welcoming Mitzi Junel Tan from Philippines, who can tell us the exact stories of a lot of climate crisis and how can we stop them. Mitzi.
Fossil fuels kill on every level and every step. From the global emissions that's causing the climate crisis, causing our people in the Philippines to drown in the floods, to the health impacts in the communities where these fossil fuel companies stay, suffocating our children and our women and our people, to the fight for oil of the global north countries, bringing conflict wherever it goes. From Iraq to Yemen to Uganda to Colombia to Ukraine to the Philippines, fossil fuels bring conflict. In the Philippines, we are caught in a war between US and China for the oil in some of the islands in our country. The US is funding our military to bomb our farmers for the resources that they can find in our country. We are all at war. The fossil fuel industry is attacking us. The military industrial complex protects the fossil fuel industry. Our generation's mass weapon of destruction is fossil fuels. And we sit here today having such a clear message that we need 1.5 degrees Celsius for peace. We need peace for 1.5 degrees Celsius. But the world leaders discussing in the rooms next to us do not see this. As Svetlana mentioned, they are addicted to fossil fuels. And they will not let it go because it benefits them, because they profit off of it. They sit there in their rooms negotiating the cover text. And what does it say? It's gotten worse compared to last year's Glasgow text, where last year said a phase down of fossil fuels. And now they've added more loopholes to it. They've added more words to it. And they've betrayed us time and time and time again. choosing the fossil fuel industry over people every single time because that is what profits them. We have to be very clear that it's not just between the global north and the global south. There are people in the global south who benefit from the exploitation of our people and of our land. There are people in the global south, the richest of the global south, many of the leaders in the global south, not in the Pacific Islands, they're great. But my country, for example, they invite the imperialist plunder that is destroying our people, our planet. They allow the fossil fuels to come desecrate our lands. And until we realize that we need to get rid of all fossil fuels, and it is possible, renewable energy is rising, and we need to have that equitable and just phase out today. We need to stop all new infrastructures, all new expansions. We need to have a just transition. We need to have a phase out. We need to have a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty, and it needs to be a global effort. Because without having it as a global effort, you leave behind the countries that have least caused the climate crisis, the ones who are least responsible, the ones that are most vulnerable. You leave behind the people who are least responsible and most vulnerable. It baffles me how COP27, you'd think it's an echo chamber, these climate summits of all the climate people who want to solve the climate crisis, but it's not. This is actually where we meet the people who are outside of our echo chamber. This is actually where we meet the people who are not on our side. In these very same conference, in these same halls that we're walking, the people who are causing the destruction of the planet are walking amongst us. Those who choose profit over people, those who choose the fossil fuel industry. We have over 600 people tied to the fossil fuel delegation. What is this COP? Who does it serve? It's not us. It's not the people in the Philippines. It's not the people in the global south. It's not the people in the global north. It's a very specific set of people. It's the richest 1% in the fossil fuel industry. And if we do not rise up and demand a fossil fuel phase out, if we do not take matters into our own hands, there will be no peace for anyone.
Phase out fossil fuel. Phase out fossil fuel. Phase out fossil fuel. Phase out fossil fuel. This is not a strike. This is not an action. This is our demand in the right place, in the right time, where the world leaders are trying to dilute even more the text that we have. They are trying to dilute our hopes by keeping 1.5. We have a very clear report by UNEP, the Gabon Mission report. Actually, 7 reports were launched and announced just before the COP. All of them are saying that we are going to the very wrong direction in a very wrong speed. All of them saying that the only hope to keep 1.5 alive is to act now and to phase fossil fuel out now, not in the future, not 2030 and not 2050. Yet we are still in a position where 1.5 is actually disappearing from our hopes, from our dreams, and again from our texts. Let's keep the 1.5 alive by pushing more and more. It's stop demanding things that it's our right. We should actually take it. And how are we, the people, want to take it is what my colleague here in the panel is actually going to tell us. It's very important not only to keep our future, but the future of the most vulnerable, the people who can actually be climate refugees at any point because their land are under the water right now. I always say political refugees might be able to return their homes when the political situation change, but climate refugees will never be able because they will not have a home anymore. We might be actually the last generation who can see the earth as it is. Let's keep it alive. Let's keep the 1.5 alive, not only for us, for the humanity, for the next generation, and for the biodiversity. Please join me to welcome one of our panelists today who will tell us about the solutions that the people are taking right now to stop this massacre. It is a massacre. It is a genocide, not only against us, but against the future generation and humanity in general. Please welcome me to join me to welcome Joseph Sikulu, who will tell us about the fossil fuel banning treaty. Joseph.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to try and get through this without being emotional. And I just want to first start by paying my respects to the space that we are in and to all of the stories that it carries. And I thought maybe a good way for me to start my intervention is with a bit of a story about my own self. And I've been thinking a lot lately of one of my ancestors in particular, and I would like to bring him into this space. Pita V is my great-great-great-great-grandfather, and he is credited as being Tonga's first ever Christian ministry, which is a bit strange. He's actually credited with converting the king of Tonga, Taufa'ahau I, to Christianity, and thus the rest of our kingdom. The story of how that happened goes, on a trip between the islands of Ha'apai, where we're from, one night the king of Tonga laid down a challenge to Pita. He threw his spear into the darkness of the ocean and challenged Pita to dive in and retrieve it. The king's totem was a shark, and the oceans were swarming with shark. And so his premise was, if your God is greater than mine, then the sharks won't attack you, and you will be able to retrieve the spear. So he threw the spear into the water, threw my great-granddad in after him, and then continued onto the island. When they arrived to the island of Ha'ano, where they were conducting the traditional kava ceremony, to the king's surprise, he looked out over the water, and emerging from there was Pita, unharmed and with the spear in hand. I've been thinking about this a lot, especially today and over the last couple of weeks, because too often as the Pacific, we feel like we're being thrown into the darkness of the ocean. Too often in these negotiations are we expected to dive into this world surrounded by sharks and find our way out. Too often are we asked to have faith. We are guided by our faith, and we are also guided by the faith we have in our leaders. But what about our faith in the process? And what about the faith of our people put in us, the communities that we serve? The cover text for COP27 is out, and it falls well below the talks that need to be. Our negotiators are in there right now holding the line on 1.5. They're holding the line on loss and damage, holding the line on adaptation, holding the line on phase out of fossil fuels. It's not enough for us anymore to return home from these COPs to tell our people that we've done everything we can but have little to show for it. We should not be here every year begging for our existence. We came into this conference in 2022 on the back of report after years of communities all over the world being impacted by climate crisis, telling us that we need to take urgent action now, but we have fallen short. The continued extraction of fossil fuels will push us far beyond 1.5, which means small island states, big ocean states like my own will face more intense cyclones, more sea level rise, more storm surges, eating our shorelines and destroying our homes. The realities of our people have been used to highlight the urgency of the climate crisis for far too long, and our people are fatigued, we are frustrated, and we have run out of time. But I will say this as well, we are more than our impacts. We are climate leadership. Tuvalu and Vanuatu are the first state parties in the world to push for a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. And so we are here to show them that the Pacific is behind them. We are innovation. Tokelau will always be the first country in the world to be powered 100% by renewable energy. We're here to uplift them for paving the way. We are the legacy of our leaders like Tony de Bruym from the Marshall Islands, who fought to have 1.5 ingrained into the Paris Agreement, and we are here to fight to keep that in the text. We are ready. Our islands have come here with ambitious NDCs. We've come here with plans for adaptation of our homes. We've come here with the solutions our communities need to ensure the quality of life we deserve in this climate crisis. Is that not enough? Is it too much to ask the nations and corporations who have contributed the most to the climate crisis to step up? We're here to ask the nations who have contributed the most to the climate crisis to shift the trillions you pour into fossil fuels to the communities who are most affected by the crisis you have created. We are here to ask for a just, equitable, and swift phase out of fossil fuels, because in the Pacific, we do not want to leave anybody behind. We are here because that just, equitable, and shift into the climate crisis is something we have not been afforded. After almost 2 weeks of COP27, the cover text released this morning does not represent the call from both the negotiation rooms as well as civil society for a just, equitable, and managed phase out of fossil fuels. Anything less than that, anything less than what we achieved in Glasgow will be viewed by the world as a failure. 1.5 for us is not just a target. It's not a hope, it's not an aspiration. 1.5 is tied to our sovereignty. It's tied to our survival. It's tied to everything we are and everything that is connected to our islands. 1.5 is tied to the peace of our home. Thank you.
We are not only talking about the problems, we are only bridging solutions. It's either the people and the planet or the money and the profit. They need to choose the place that they want to be, and it's better to be our place because we will be the winners. We will conserve our planet, our future, and of course the future generations' future too. Africa, a continent that suffered from wars, civil wars, conflict wars, and a lot of impacts of climate change, famine, poverty, floods. Not only Africa, Asia. We have Pakistan, and we all know how much the floods in Pakistan were actually devastating this year. Third of their territory was under the water, third of a country, and this will be the case of many countries very soon if we did not act now. Philippines, and we had someone from there and told us how much the push for more fossil fuel is actually hurting not only the farmers, but the whole ecosystem in Philippines. Science have been very clear. The European continent is now more than ever aware of the danger of actually buying more fossil fuel, yet there is no investment in renewable energy. Trillions of dollars, trillions of euros, trillions of money is going to the wrong direction. Instead of investing this money in adaptation, in building the resilience of the community, and in shifting towards renewables for development, for the future generation, but of course, for lowering the emission, they are investing more and more in fossil fuel. I've read a report launched by the Guardians, and the group behind it is called Lingu, and they called it the carbon bumps. And the carbon bumps are actually the sites that emits more than gigaton of CO2. And guess what? They found 400 sites that actually emits more than a gigaton of CO2. And 40% of these projects are yet to start. So there's still a huge investment. 40% is still yet coming. So we are not talking about phasing down. We're not talking about phasing out. We're actually talking about phasing and scaling up. This is a clear misleading. And our message should be very much clear. Stop fossil fuel, stop the fossil fueled war, the people and the planet, not the money and the profit. And this is what we will keep pushing for. We also have the Pacific and the small island states. We can bring representatives from all around the world that are talking about how much important it is to keep the 1.5 alive. Yet, are they going to listen? Are they going to do it? And if not, how can we enforce it? And how can we take our own right by conserving our own environment? It's up to you now also to share your stories, to share your concerns. And if you have any questions for the panelists, please join us and join the discussion. Any questions? Yes.
Hello. Good. Thank you so much for this. Ivana Kudosma from CNN. Svetlana, question for you. In the current situation in Ukraine and in other countries, we are seeing this across Europe, the economic problems and all that. How difficult is it for people like you to maintain the focus and the urgency of climate action so that it is on people's minds rather than or on top of all the other problems that they have? Because a lot of the politicians here are saying, we have so many other problems. We have to send money to Ukraine. We have to deal with cost of living crisis. We just don't have money to put on loss and damage and things like that. So how do you do it? And any tips on how to keep it on the agenda?
Well, thank you for this question, actually. And I should say that from the beginning of the full-scale war, half of 6 months, I didn't speak about climate change for Ukrainian media, but I continued to do it for international media because, of course, for Ukrainians, it was not priority. But I had these feelings, and I know that many Ukrainians had this feeling from very beginning that sooner or later, but we will need to rebuild our country. Of course, this is a question of time and price of lives, mainly, because all infrastructure can be actually rebuilt and rebuilt in new and much better way. That's what we want actually to do. And I can just continue with this, how to do it. So all this pavilion and many here events were devoted to this, how we will do in our future. So that gives me hope, that gives me strength to continue, because I'm thinking about future.
Thank you very much. Thinking about the future, I think this is something that we need to do more and more. Any more questions? No questions from the audience. It's either I'm a very good moderator or a very bad moderator. So either you get it all or you don't get anything. Okay, thank you very much for being here with us today. It is very important again to deliver our voice to everyone, and also just to complete the circle that we are talking about here about our demands. We are also joined by the Climate Clock initiative, and
we're really honored to be in this pavilion. We know that peace is what will keep us in this earth for future generations. I am from South Africa. My name is Ntokozo. I'm the campaigns director of Climate Clock. I've lived with climate change all my life. The first time we lost our home to hurricanes, I was 4 years old. And the last time we lost our home was just a couple of months ago. So I'm really honored to present this award to Nisreen for the work that she does. The first time she saw the Climate Clock, she wrote on it, "Do it now. Not tomorrow, not in 2050, not in 2070. Stop delaying climate, act in time." And we are trusting you to take this message to our leaders, to tell them that we do not have time and the time to act is now. We're trusting you to take the message of peace, to take the message of climate reparations as a real solution, the message of indigenous protection of land, and the message of a just transition to our leaders, and really honored. Thank you, Nisreen. Oh, okay. Okay.
Hi, I know I missed my spot to ask questions, but I actually do have a question for Alexandra Matvichuk, if that's okay. Hello, Alexandra. This is a privilege to meet you. My name is Martyna. I'm from Poland. And I just wanted to ask you how you seeing what's happening now on the conference, observing it from afar, you as a human rights activist in this climate space, how do you feel where this is going? how do you feel about seeing this connection that is becoming more and more present in the climate space between human rights and climate crisis?
Unfortunately, I couldn't follow the conference precisely because I'm in Kiev, and we yesterday was under severe Russian bombarding, and we have a lot of work with documenting war crimes, which I'm precisely focused on for this moment. But I know for sure that in our world, everything is interconnected, and that's why the oil and gas started to become a threat to human rights and fulfillment of human rights obligation. So I think that we as a humankind have to find a complex answers to the complex questions, and our political leaders have to take responsibility to act for the long horizon, not only for short-term result. And our political leaders in the world have to weigh their political decisions not only on economical benefits or securities issue, but remember that other factors like climate, like human rights, are the solid fundament for their political decisions. Without this component, we will have no sustainable development and peace. Thank you.
Alexandra, thank you also for being with us the whole event. It's a great honor, as you mentioned, and we should work more and more to actually keep the peace and security of the planet. Does anyone have any questions for Alexandra since she's still here online? Sure. Yes, Dominica.
No, I do not have a question specifically, but we did prepare something to kind of create a little symbol collectively here from this panel that can be sent to Kiev, to Ukraine, to all of the cities that are now lacking any electricity because after the missile attacks, over 40% of Ukraine is cut off from electricity, but also to send a signal to the Pacific Islands, to Philippines, to Sudan, and to any other war-stricken, climate crisis affected area, because as long as we depend on fossil fuels, there's no peace, there's no security. And I think this today can be an incredible beginning of us linking those fights and those struggles. And so it's maybe we can somehow also connect with our speakers, because I think they are the most important guests today here, and somehow stand behind their messages together.
Oh yeah, she's here.